I need to be able to hear if they're attacking one another, and I think our panelists are having a little trouble hearing right now too. So we're going to have to move on, but I love your passion, but we need to be able to hear what everyone is saying. Ms. Swafford, you have the next question. You may direct it to either candidate.
All right. My question is for Ms. Nunn. In 2012, the Democrat Party finally put a plank in their platform allowing the individuals the freedom to structure and decide who they wanted to marry. Were you in favor of that platform before that time, or do you now support that platform that allows the individuals the freedom to decide who they want to marry?
I'm sure I heard, but could you say it one more time for me? I'm sorry.
In 2012, the Democrat Party finally put a plank in their platform allowing individuals the freedom to decide who they wanted to marry. Were you in favor of that platform in the Democrat Party's plank before 2012, or are you in favor of it now?
I have said throughout this campaign that I believe that all people should have the same right as my husband and I have to marry. But a sacrament, and that every faith tradition needs to be able to define marriage for itself. And that's been my position throughout the campaign.
All right. Next question, Mr. Perdue. You may ask it of either candidate, please.
Thank you. Michelle, I grew up right here in Middle Georgia, down the road on Highway 96, working on our family farm. I've even said publicly that I want to serve on the Senate Agriculture Committee. You've said some very positive things about agriculture in the state, and yet in your plan, you rank agriculture number 18 in your list of priorities. And rural issues, number 30. My question tonight is your campaign just a well-funded effort to deceive the voters of Georgia? To keep them finding out?
I didn't hear all of that, but I think I got the gist of it. I will tell you, for you to question my Georgia credentials is somewhat ironic. I have been born here. I'm a ninth-generation Georgian. I've served and built an organization for 26 years here. While you were spending your career in places all over this country outsourcing jobs, according to your own deposition. And integrity and commitment from Georgia, and I've worked alongside of Georgians, again, while you have been outsourcing jobs. I would say that is a part of the American enterprise system. I just don't think it is actually what we need more of in Washington.
All right. We will wrap this up with a 30-second rebuttal from Mr. Perdue. 30-second rebuttal.
You know, Michelle, back at you. You didn't answer that question at all. Your list of priorities, there are 17 items more important than the farmers in this state.
Now, where did you get that?
Out of your plan.
And I will tell you that for over a year, I've talked about serving on the Agriculture Committee. And let me just put it to you this way. Saxby Chambliss, Johnny Isaacson said the Farm Bill was the most important piece of legislation for Georgia and its citizens, and yet you stood against it. The Farm Bureau was for it. Every single farmer that I talked to has said it before my votes were amplified. They're against it.
I'm going to wrap this up right now, Mr. Perdue.
Well, folks, I'm sorry. I'm just a business guy. But in my boardroom, we had to answer questions. She still didn't explain to farmers why you have 17 items more important than farmers in this state.
We're going to move on. Panelist questions now. Jeff Hullinger, you have the next question. You'll ask it of Mr. Perdue, please.
Mr. Perdue, since we are talking a bit about agriculture here, or at least I believe we could hear some of that, not all of it, maybe about 10 or 15% of it. So let me weigh in again on the issue of immigration, and one of the more searing images, at least from television spots during this campaign, has been you, a close-up of you saying, no amnesty. But the reality here in this state, defined by agriculture, is that even in times when unemployment in the state was hovering between 11 and 12%, we couldn't get anybody to pick crops. I mean, there were all kinds of fields that went untended and unharvested. Does that not constrict the agriculture business in the state?
Absolutely. But first, let's put context on this. The immigration issue is a very complex issue. I think we need to break it down into its components. And the first component that we have to solve is our border. It's not just an immigration issue. We have to secure our border to ensure our own national defense. Secondly, what's important though, is that farmers in this state have a hard time getting legal labor. Why? Because the bureaucratic nonsense in Washington does not work for farmers. The H-2A program only has about 14 farmers in the state that can even use it because it's so expensive. The number one thing we need to do in the state of Georgia for agriculture is help these farmers revise the H-2 laws to where they can get access to legal labor. Thank you.
Next question, Jim Galloway. You'll ask it of Ms. Nunn, please.
Ms. Nunn, the nomination of State Court of Appeals Judge Michael Boggs to the federal bench has been stalled in the U.S. Senate because the votes this Democrat cast in favor of the Confederate battle emblem on the state flag and because of his opposition to gay marriage while a legislator in Atlanta. If you're elected, will you support the Boggs nomination?
Let me go back for 1 minute and just talk about agricultural, because I do want to, again, ask David next time. Again, misrepresented my position on agriculture, and I just want to make sure that people know that. The Boggs nomination is one that I think is problematic, and I think that I have real concerns about it, as a number of other senators do. I have said that I would, as any senator would expect to do, want to have a conversation with him, want to have a dialogue with him, but I have real serious reservations about that nomination.
Randall Savage, next question, you'll address it to Ms. Swafford, please.
Ms. Swafford, there's been a lot of discussion about legalizing medical marijuana in the state of Georgia. If you were elected to the Senate, would you support legalizing medical marijuana throughout the United States?
I believe right here in Georgia we've had unique cases this year where we've seen families really struggle with the issue of a known substance that's helping them with their children with these seizures. So that's a very well-known factor. We've got families that are having to uproot their life and move to different states. And if Georgia doesn't get progressive about this issue, we're going to have other states around us that are going to do it, and the families are just going to leave Georgia. And that's leaving jobs, that's leaving a lot of economic vitality to this state. So yes, I think that's very important. In order to allow that to happen, we need to definitely allow the legalization of marijuana for medical purposes.
Next question from Leah Fleming. Leah, you'll direct it to Mr. Perdue, please.
This week, the Treasury Department released the actual deficit figure for fiscal year 2014, which ended on September 30. And the total deficit over the period is expected to ring in at more than $9 trillion. I know that you said that if elected, getting the national debt under control and balancing the budget would be your top priorities. How would you do that, and how would you do it without raising taxes?
Thank you, Leah. It's the crisis that pulled Bonnie and me into this race. Today, this is serious, guys. Today, we are borrowing over a third of what we're spending in the last 5 years. We have almost an $18 trillion debt. This president sold us a bill of goods in 2008 when he said that he would cut the debt in half. He's on track to more than double it. Right now, that debt is $1 million per household. The way to get out of this is cut spending and grow the economy. The best way to grow the economy is to cut taxes, pull back our regulators, and absolutely unlock our resources. My Democratic opponent was handpicked by Barack Obama. Do you think that she's going to go against his failed economic policies that have created this mess where we have fewer people working today in any time since Jimmy Carter was president.
Ms. Nunn, do you wish to rebut?
Ultimately, I think David and I would agree that the long-term debt is a serious challenge. I think where we would disagree is that I believe that it will only be resolved through a collaborative approach, bipartisanship, not by Republicans, not by Democrats, but by working together and actually focusing on compromise and actually growing our economy, revenue neutral, tax reform, but also cutting out the waste and fraud and abuse, but at the same time curbing, for instance, our medical expenditures. So we have our work cut out for us, but it has to be done through collaboration.
Next question. Jeff Hollinger, you're the next question. You'll direct it to Ms. Nunn, please.
Ms. Nunn, you have said repeatedly that your role model in the Senate, should you be elected, would be your father, Sam Nunn, who served the state for many years nobly. And you said that you would reach across the aisle, that you wouldn't be locked into any certain ideology or dogma, that you would chart a course where you would go to both sides. But in reality, and by your father's own admission, the Senate is a radically different place than the Senate that he left when he came back home to Georgia. It is so partisan at this point. Is it possible to reach across the aisle? And if you attempt to do so, your party will penalize you for sort of operating in such a way. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I have heard my father say many times that he never passed a single piece of meaningful legislation without Republican support. And I agree with that. I believe that we have to have bipartisanship. I will tell you, when David was asked, is there a single Democratic idea that you could support, he failed to think of one. That's not what we need. Work across the aisle. And in fact, the only way we are going to change Washington is through leadership, through people who are focused on relationships and on things like campaign finance reform. Again, David has rejected that. But we can change Washington, but only by sending people who are committed to work across the aisle.
Mr. Perdue, do you wish 30 seconds to rebut?
Thank you. I don't know about y'all. I'm getting a little bored hearing this. I'm going to work across the aisle when nobody in the Democratic side has decided to work across the aisle with the Republicans in the United States Senate. We have 384 bills stuck on Harry Reid's desk. Your first vote will be for Harry Reid as Senate Majority Leader. We cannot stand 2 more years of his and possibly 10 more years of this direction. You say you want to be a team builder, but you will not bite the hand that feeds you.
Next question comes from Jim Galloway. You'll direct it to Ms. Swofford, please.
Ms. Swofford, you're going to have to pardon me if this question has been asked. I'm kind of deaf at this point. Monday's Supreme Court decision not to hear appeals of lower court rulings that legalize same-sex marriage in 5 states could very well become a precursor to overturning Georgia's state constitutional ban on same-sex marriage. Are you content, please let me finish, are you content to let the issue be determined by courts, or if elected to the Senate, would you contemplate some sort of congressional intervention?
The primary purpose of the federal government is to preserve and protect our individual rights. Government should not be involved in the decision of how we structure our individual relationships. The Libertarian Party has been on record since the very beginning on this very issue. Individual power and responsibility is at the core of what we believe. And we believe that you should be allowed to make that decision. Because if you're not, how do we trust the government to make that decision for you? That makes no sense. So absolutely, the whole reason government got involved in marriage in the first place, if you go back and look that up, it's not a very good reason, and it's a very sad reason in our nation's history. So absolutely, the purpose of our federal government is to preserve and protect the individual's rights. And we need to champion that and be responsible and allow that with individuals and how they structure their marriage responsibilities.
Next question will come from Randall Savage. Randall, you'll direct it to Mr. Perdue, please.
Mr. Perdue, on your website you say that you would repeal the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. added the fact that Obamacare is President Obama's baby, and that if you try to repeal it, he'll veto it. How are you going to get that done?
Thank you, Randall. First of all, this law is one of the worst laws that have ever been passed in the United States history. The Speaker of the House said you have to vote for the bill to find out what's in it, to allow the U.S. government to manage 16% of our economy. This is failing. Costs are rising. Accessibility is down. Jobs are being destroyed. Almost 2/3 of American small businesses have stopped hiring or have cut back employment. This is a law that's got to be repealed and replaced. Congressman Tom Price has a perfectly good bill in the House, and if we got it there, we can pass it. The difficulty is the next 2 years, I think we need to delay the mandates to January 1, 2017, and let the people of America vote in the presidential election in 2016 and have a referendum about Obamacare.
Lee, you have the next question. You'll direct it to Ms. Nunn, please.
Ms. Nunn, I know that you said Obamacare is not perfect, but do you support the Affordable Care Act?
I have said time and time again that I believe that there are things that we need to fix about ACA and things that we need to build upon. So when it comes to fixing it, I think we need to add a more affordable tier of insurance for individuals. I think we need to extend tax credits to small businesses, repeal cuts that are threatening our rural hospitals right here in Middle Georgia. And I do not think that we should be having this argument for the next 6 years. You are more of the same. You just heard David outline a plan for prosecuting and attacking the other side. If you want to have people that are going to work together pragmatically to do things that will matter in people's lives, like ensuring that people who have pre-existing conditions have access to health insurance, that parents can cover their kids up until age 26, and you want to put the people of Georgia first, then I would ask you to look at my candidacy.
30-second rebuttal, Mr. Perdue, please.
Well, thank you. So let's think about Obamacare for a second. My opponent talks about all this work across the aisle. This law passed without one Republican voting for it.
Jeff, you have the next question to Ms. Swafford, please.
Ms. Swafford, you talk as a libertarian